Hey guys, I had a chance to sit down with the auto giants. They flew all the way out here from DC. These guys grew up in the hood, in Ohio. Nobody gave them anything. They worked hard every single day and went from 0 to 100 million. But they shared some of their secrets and how they did it and how they maintained their success being at such a high level. And it was extremely insightful and extremely valuable. So stay tuned and make sure you watch it until the end of the video. My dad, he doesn't say a lot of stuff. He's like from Greenpoint, Brooklyn. He's old school, like he's a sweet man, but he doesn't talk a lot. And he's like, John, you're always gonna meet, you know, it's just the way it is. They're never gonna go away. And I'm just like, he's so right, dude. So like, how do you deal with or bad news? Like, you're gonna walk on a landmine.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a toothache. You're gonna get a migraine.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a stomach ache. Someone's gonna fuck you over. You know, someone's going to be an asshole to you. Somebody's going to cut your throat. It's just, you can't get out of it, especially if you're in business.
I think having a way, personal, business, whatever it might be, having a way to respond to bad news or that landmine when you walk in the office, you have to have that. Like, you can't, if you want to be able to handle problems, you have to have a way to respond to bad news.
I think there's a moment in every situation where you can stop and think before you say something, you know? Like my daughter had a little incident at school. My first email draft, I went completely nuclear.
Sure.
Like bad. It was like crazy, psychotic shit.
Right. Well, it's your kid, right?
Yeah, and so I took it really personal because basically another boy was picking on her.
Okay.
You know, and I got really upset. So I went totally nuclear because I didn't like how they were handling it there. And then I just got really calm. I had to write 3 drafts. I wrote it in a doc first, and it's like, I kept calming down, and I'm like, and then I asked my daughter, what outcome would you like? You know, it's like a process.
Yeah.
Like, you know, hey, her name's Olivia. Olivia, what would you like the outcome to be? And she's like, I just want it to stop, Daddy. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I could probably make it stop, you know, in a nice way.
Sure.
But I was going to go nuclear, throw the lawyers on them, and like call the superintendent. You know,
Right.
That's where your head goes.
You're like your boss. Hey, lawsuit.
Yeah, I want to talk
hey,
to everybody.
Yeah.
And my ego's like, oh, they don't even know the lawsuits I've been in. You know, my head starts going.
Sure.
You know, and I'm just like, it's that kind of stuff. It's like, I think that is like the most important life lesson is to become better at sort of dealing with that sort of stuff, you know, or if you get bad news right before you go on stage, let's say you're a public speaker, let's say somebody's at the Limitless Arena and they're next and they get a bad phone call right before they walk up that ramp. You know, it's like what separates people is if they can compartmentalize and go up on that stage and still bring the heat.
Yeah.
And to me, I admire that. Somebody that can do that. And I think that is a quality that I appreciate in entrepreneurs. That's a quality that I appreciate in people in our team. You know, we get bad news. It's volatile. It's up and down and all around. It's not always perfect. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. And I just think it's like, it's a quality that I appreciate and I admire. I'm like, man, I just want to be peaceful, man. You know, like I want to be calm. So that's why I try to work to be calm because I'm not naturally calm, you know.
When did you learn how to be calm in business?
I had to have things taken from me.
You had to fail.
I had to fail, yeah.
Yeah.
I had my first business when I was 27. I started my first contract construction business. I was working for a huge contractor and I worked for a large developer out of Los Angeles. And the superintendents there, they were great, high level. They had like 11 billion in assets or something. It's a huge company. And one of the guys liked me. He was like, hey, I really like you. I like working with you. I heard you got your license. So he gave me a shot. And of course, I had a job and I was holding down a job, but I never operated at a high level. And so they started throwing projects at me. Of course, I took everything in that they gave me and I probably shouldn't have. And I started making a lot of money. I'd never made a lot of money before, like a lot of money. I was getting checks in the mail and I'm like, ugh. So,
sure.
the party's on, right?
You knew everything.
Yeah, I'm like, I know everything and I made all the wrong decisions. And long story short, I blew that thing up.
Uh-huh.
I lost everything, which crushed my ego. And a guy, actually, an older gentleman who I still know to this day, was like in his 70s. He's like, John, you're not a hotshot anymore, dude. I don't know what to tell you. You have no money. You lost your bank account. You have no place to live. And you're basically completely fucked. And I was like, how dare he say that to me? I thought it was the hottest shit out, right?
Right.
And it was good.
That was after the business
It
failed.
was after the failure. He said it, and I needed to hear that. And
Sure.
it crushed me, it crushed my ego. And that day, which is crazy, I went to the gym and somebody broke into my car and stole my surfboard and my guitar. So I was like, dude, I felt this small. I mean, it was so bad. It was so humbling.
All on the same day.
That he had that comment, that gentleman gave me that comment, and that night I lost all my stuff, and I'm like, but of course you don't feel it in the moment, but I look back on that, I'm like, that's the best thing that ever happened to me, dude.
You took 3 bullets in a day, right?
I needed it.
Yeah.
I needed it, and I was like, he's so right, I'm not a hot shot.
But here's the good thing about that, though. This guy, right? What you just said a minute ago was the most important thing is you still talk to him to this day.
I still talk to this gentleman, absolutely.
Right? Because
Yeah.
he gave you what you needed to hear, not what you wanted to hear.
Yeah. And you have to let go. My mom used to say something, I'm trying not to get emotional, but she would say, drop the rock.
What's that mean?
Like, let go. If you're holding on to something so tight, like for me, I was holding on to the past, like who I thought I was, like my perception of who I thought I was when I was running that business, which was, I thought I was a hot shot. But it was really just the developer, like me, the guy that, one of the owners, basically, he just liked me. He thought it was cool.
Sure.
And once I was sitting in his office, I was in the lobby, and he's like, hey, John, good to see you. And I'm like embarrassed. He's like, are you behaving yourself? I felt like a little kid,
Sure.
And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And he's like, well, you don't really have a choice, do you? Because I was starting to kind of fumble with him.
Uh-huh.
And they were very nice to me, and they sort of wrote it off and just sort of cut ties with me gracefully, because I
Okay.
was small compared to what they were doing. I mean, they were doing hundreds of millions in development work, so he was just kind to me. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason he liked me. I still haven't come back to meet with this person, which I would like to, and reconcile with him, I think they have like 17 trillion or excuse me, 17 billion in assets at this point. They're really, really big.
Yeah.
So, I want to come back to him. So I don't know where the hell I was going, but these types of people, you remember them, and like your life, it's like a highlight reel of memories, moments. That's why movies are like clips of moments. And I think our life is the same thing. I look back on it, I'm like, I remember that moment, and it helped me so much. But for me, I didn't know. Now I know, and I say this comfortably, I don't really care, is that I didn't know shit. I was so wet behind the ears, it's not even funny. And what it was is I had to graduate to these new levels. And so the books that I read, the people that I met, the failures, making careless mistakes and not having well thought out plans, I think perhaps brought me to where I am today. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And so, as my mother says, sometimes you got to drop the rock,
Yeah.
and just say, you know what, here's my cards. This is where I'm at. I'm not killing it right now, but I have the will and the desire to try, and I think if you could get to that point, that's a pretty good start.
Yeah, I think a good point is you realized at that time you could do better. You realized you had room to grow. What people don't understand is they think if you can do better, they're telling themselves something bad, when actuality it's like, hey, you have a problem. It's not a problem. If you have an area to get better, it's a profit opportunity. It's a place to dig into and work on your strengths, build on your weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was in commercial air conditioning. I had just moved to this new company, and there was this guy, his name was Gary Doyle. I don't know if he'll ever see this, but I really appreciate him. He had a southern accent, and I was standing on top of the roof, and I'm like baking in the sun, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? And he looks at me, he goes, John, are you mechanically inclined? And I said, I guess so. And he goes, are you willing to listen to everything I say? And I said, yes. And so he took me under his wing, and he taught me these practices, which is, I always think about the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi. He didn't teach him the karate moves. He's like, paint the fence, up, down, very simple concept. And it was kind of that kind of thing. He's like, you're going to roll the chords like this. You're going to do everything really clean. He showed me his process.
Okay.
like his system of operations for that particular industry that I was in. And I think I use that application in my life. I have systems of operations that I use in every area of my life, and I sort of hold myself accountable to those systems of operations each day. Like I have, and then I cast up a balance sheet, at different times throughout the year, and I'm like, how did I perform? Did I do the stuff I said I was going to do? And I think business, and maybe you could speak on this, entrepreneurship, like someone somewhere, no matter where you're at, gives you that opportunity. If you're willing, you got to be willing. You can't be arrogant or think you know everything. And I just think I'm so grateful for that. And that's what I appreciate about entrepreneurship and business, which I'm sure you've experienced and you could speak to.
Yeah. So I think you always go back to the one person that gave you a shot, the one person that believed in you, right? And I think that's what you're speaking on. This is before or after the failed?
This was after the failure, yeah.
Okay.
I had to get a job. They call them like get well jobs, when you f everything up, you got to go get a job. So I went and got a job. It was so good. It was such a good experience for me because these old timers in construction, they had a way of doing things. It was very specific and very planned. It's like their buckets were a certain way. All their tools were organized. You knew where everything was. It was very specific and very, very detailed. They kept logbooks. I mean, people don't really do logbooks anymore. That was a skill that I adopted to my life, is like I have a logbook. I fill out moleskin binders with a pen. I use very specific binders that I like, the flexible moleskin ones. And I use pens, and then there's these 3 highlighters that I like from Target, very specifically. You sort of adopt your thing. Like you said, you have this pad that you use, and that's your thing.
Well, I like the blue highlighter for my books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the application of these systems, your processes, in other words, in business is essential.
Yeah.
And not kind of, I think that's where I was trying to go, is like, when you first get in, you're a little naive because you're taking in all this information and you're like, oh, I could do this. Business is easy, but you're not really thinking about what's really going on, like how important systems are and processes and like operations and all this other stuff that you don't really think about. You think it's just going to be easy street. You're going to start making all this money and you're going to win in it. And I think that's what I was thinking. I was like, I've never made this much money in my life. I can't believe it. Why have I been working for people all this time? But I lost all that shit.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't mature enough to handle that money.
But at that time, did you have systems or processes?
No, I was a disaster. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
So did you work on self-development?
Yeah. Well, after that, yeah.
So you go in, you make a whole bunch of money, whether you get lucky or you're a good sales guy and you start your own business, whether it's timing or market, and you go and you realize, looking back on it, hey, I didn't have processes. Hey, I didn't have systems. Hey, I wasn't working on my personal development, right? And the old timers, I think I call them old timers, but might not be the greatest thing to label them, but I'll go with it since you said it. But
the old timers had processes. But go ahead.
The old timers have processes, and it's that constant routine, that constant discipline that over time stacks up, right? It's the constant blocking and tackling. It's the constant repetitive, being in, like making your bed before you leave the house. Hey, I'm checking off the box. I checked off a win. Hey, I went to the gym this morning at 5 a.m. Hey, I woke up and I meditated at 4 a.m., right? You're constantly stacking wins, and you're constantly building discipline to where over time, it doesn't show, hey, you document something, you come up with a process for 30 days in business. It's not going to show instantly, right?
Yeah.
But 60, 90 days, that's where the magic starts to happen.
I think that's what I was trying to get into, since you are operational. You oversee operations. You're the operation mind of the business, of the brothers. And I think
the operational manifesto.
The operational stud. You're the operational king. And I think for me, because I'm an artistic type, okay?
Yeah.
I'm the guy that, like, you put me in that room over there, I'm going to stay in there, for a week if I can, right?
You're a visionary.
Yeah, that's
with being an artist.
Yeah, that's right. I see myself as an artistic visionary. Like I read the books that I read I read the Pixar book. It's absolutely fantastic. It's called Creativity Inc. And like, I really relate to their, it's a fascinating story. I don't know if you've read it, but it's absolutely fantastic. And I had no idea, and a lot of people I don't think really know what they went through. It was insane. Like, the story is unbelievable. But
Pixar, the film.
Pixar films, yeah,
Okay,
exactly. And like, when Steve Jobs came in and all of that, he ended up putting $54 million of his own money out of his own pocket because he got canned from his own company.
Yep.
Because a new guy came in and they fucking booted him out, and he wanted to start his own version of Apple. I'm forgetting the name of it, but he did start it, and he did start selling products. I forgot what it was called, but it was around that time. And then the two guys, there was like a computer science guy, then like the animator person. There was two gentlemen, and basically the computer science guy, the guy Brainiac of the Pixar origination, was the guy that wrote this book, Creativity Inc., and he tells you the whole story. It's fascinating. It's crazy. And it sort of shows you, like, number one, it's not one person. I think right now when everybody thinks about Pixar, they go, oh, Steve Jobs. But it wasn't Steve Jobs. I mean, he was a big part of it.
Sure.
But it wasn't him. It was an army of incredible people that were absolutely fascinating, you know. And so I think all of us need this harmony, like balance. Like, I play piano, there's accompaniment and then the melody, right? There's two parts to it. And if music sounds dissonant, if it doesn't have right shit in it, like, you know, business. So like, everyone has a role, in other words. So like, I think this monolithic approach, I think for me originally in business, I was like trying to do everything myself, and I thought I had it all figured out, but I definitely don't. And I know where my weaknesses are, and I now value tremendously, and I'm leading into something, operational infrastructure, and like having systems and having like forms and like, you know, having processes where it's like, you know, right now, if you're not careful, your whole life can be on text chains, as an example, you know, and you'll get bombarded, or any number of things could happen if you don't have these sort of processes and systems. I think is important, right? Operational stuff. So
Yeah, I think too is, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, right? Most of the time you're a visionary, you're a sales guy, so your strengths might not necessarily be what got you to that point, right? The coming up with, you said, a Word doc, or hey, this is how we're going to handle this, or hey, when we handle this with this customer or this vendor or this client, this is our process, right? People struggle with going to do that because it's not fun, right? It's the not, you know, you call it like the sexy stuff. It's the not sexy stuff that gets you, okay, here's the consistency. You document the process. All right, cool. Now we have the consistency. All right, cool. Now we handle every single phone call like this. Or you say, you were mentioning a problem comes up, a landmine, or how do you handle bad news? Okay, well, what's the backup plan? Like, what are we going to do when this happens? Like, all right, we lost internet. We can't, if you're in, I don't know, let's say you're Best Buy, right? You're a sales company. We lost internet. We lost phones. Okay, what's our backup plan? Do you have a documented process for that? So if you can go and you can dig into that from the beginning, the earlier on you can adapt that, the faster you can grow and scale, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I think operations are absolutely essential, and it's like, I think we have to be careful with our assumptions. I'm speaking of the general public, you know, they have sort of, and in particular people that haven't had their own businesses, and I think especially right now it's like pop, you know, like so popular, like entrepreneurship, start your own business, you know, and it sounds great, right?
Yeah.
But it's more than what people might think. It's not what people think it is, and I think it's important to speak on it. And it's like, it takes more than one person. It's like, nothing monolithic or tyrannical ever works. It just doesn't. All you got to do is read history. Every tyrannical or monolithic operation that ever rose fell. Persian Empire, Roman Empire, on it goes, right? So I think understanding that first, and then understanding what your weaknesses are, which mine are definitely operations. I now have systems that I use and they work for me, but I adopted them from other people. And, you know, I have people that help me with the operational stuff because it's just not my strong suit, dude. You know, and I think it's important to realize that it takes a team, and you and your brothers have a team, and I'm sure everyone has a different role that they play, but it works, it functions, right? You guys have a business, and the industry you're in isn't as important as having a team that works, whatever it is. We could probably deploy you into a painting business and you guys would probably figure it out.
I think we'd do fine. Yeah.
Yeah, because you guys have
The same. It's the application of business. It's the application of business. It's the application of processes. It's the application of team building, leadership, accountability. Right.
yeah, that's what matters. And I think people overlook that. And so how important has that been for you? Can you kind of speak on that a little bit? Like building teams, leadership, the stuff that people like, let's maybe dig into that a little bit more,
Yeah. Starting with which one?
Team building and how you guys got to where you're at. I mean, how did it happen? It obviously didn't happen overnight. You guys
No.
probably humble beginnings. You were probably selling used cars or
Yep.
maybe not even started.
Yeah.
You probably didn't start there, right?
Yeah.
Even you selling used cars, you probably ran parts or did some.
I was
so where did
washing cars when I was 15, right? That's
There
where it
you
started.
go.
Yeah.
That's your Mr. Miyagi.
That was my Mr. Miyagi.
Yep,
Right?
wax on, wax off.
Wax
right?
on, wax off. That was my Mr. Miyagi.
And that was valuable, probably, right? Starting
Extremely valuable. Yeah. Especially when you start at that part of the business and you realize, as you grow and you scale, you're like, okay, that porter, that detail guy, that person washing cars plays a huge part of the team, right? I got started off in an entry level position, right? It wasn't like I got thrown into, hey, here's what you're going to do. Your brother's own used car store. You're going to be promoted instantly or any of that. I was washing cars at 15 years old. And let me tell you, washing cars isn't very fun, right?
Definitely not.
It's not like you're, people are like, oh, you're hopping in cars and you're doing this. No, you got, the sales guy screaming at you because their customer wants to get out, and the manager says, I have an appointment coming in on this car. So starting at that very entry level, labor intensive role was super helpful.
Yeah, and then from there you started washing cars. Then what happened next?
Pretty much day one, dollar went out of high school, I was selling cars. That was where it started.
And what's the day in the life of selling car? Everybody, I think car sales has a reputation. Well, a lot of people probably fear it because it's so fucking hard. And then the people that are successful at it, they know what it takes. Like you have to have a certain level of, you got to have some chops, right? Or you got to have some strength to be able to be a car salesperson.
You have to be able to deal with rejection extremely well, because if
Yeah.
you talk to 100 people and you do a good job, you're going to sell maybe 5 of them a car, right? Whether it's on the phone or, in person, or somebody just pulls up on the lot. It's very similar to, like a pro baseball player. If you succeed 30% of the time when you're at the plate, you're going to the Hall of Fame, right? So
Yeah.
being able to deal with rejection is huge.
Yeah, and I think how important do you think it is? I've been thinking about this actually lately, and I was talking to my daughter about this. Customer service, like early when you're young, it's so valuable, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with people, because the more frequent you deal with people and customers, the more it prepares you for later in life, because you learn how people operate. You know what makes them tick. You get used to certain rejections, certain responses, certain behavioral.
Yeah. Well, I think when people look at customer service, they think it's, they look at like, hey, what do I have to do to keep the customer maybe happy, right? But customer service is actually, in my opinion, it's a way of being a professional, right? If you can't give good customer service, you're not going to succeed anywhere. It's permission to play.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you can't, for me, I never thought about getting into car sales, but I definitely appreciate people that do it and admire them for seeing it through, because I'm sure it is not easy. But I got into the service industry, restaurant service. That's where I started. And it was a good experience, though, because people are pissed, dude, all the time. They're not happy.
Yeah.
Where's my fucking Diet Coke? There's a spot on this cup. My food's late. My food's cold. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
They're assholes.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for you, though. It really is. Like I was just telling my daughter, I'm like, when you finish college, you're going into customer service. It's the best thing for you.
Well, you learn people skills, right?
Yeah, you have to.
People think selling cars or selling houses or selling, shoes, it's more of dealing with people than dealing with the actual product itself, right? If somebody comes in to look at a car or a guitar or shoes or, a TV, all the research has been done in most cases. The consumer knows more about the product than the actual salesperson, him or herself, right? So if you can deal with people and you can make a friend when transacting with somebody, you're going to succeed a lot more than somebody who actually knows about the product. The best sales guys and the best sales gals don't know the most about the product. The best sales guys and the best sales gals are the ones that are the best with people. And they listen to what the customer says, right? So to your point, if you can listen to what the customer says, if you can be in customer service and develop those people skills, then you're going to succeed.
Yeah, and I think people tend to, and I think car salesmen know, and women know this better than anybody. Rejection's not personal, but in the beginning you take it personal.
Very much, yeah.
You think there's something wrong with you,
Yeah.
but it's really not about you,
No.
right? It sounds easy though when you say it, like conceptually you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you experience it, you take it personal, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
So that wears off eventually, doesn't it? Like after you do like a blitz of dealing with a lot of customers and rejection,
Yeah.
eventually you realize it's not really about me, right? Like,
No.
yeah,
You just have to kind of callous the brain, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's important that people get
That brain's a muscle, right? So if you can train your brain on how to deal with that, then you're gonna, if you can deal with rejection, then you're already in a percentile that most people are not in, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Auto Giants. What is Auto Giants? What do you guys do?
Yeah. So who's Auto Giant? So we're three brothers, family owned and operated, right? Started as oldest brother started with a vision of owning used car dealerships, and as we went about, we started to realize we grew. We had some used car locations, and we were only boxing ourselves into a certain part of the market, right? So we went in, got a franchise store, was Mitsubishi, was our first franchise store, became a top performer with them, and our first acquisition, that was our used car store, we turned into a new car store. Then we got our first acquisition, which is a Nissan store, and January of this year was our first month being number one in the DC market with Nissan. So it was kind of a goal for ours towards the second quarter, maybe middle part of the year, and we already hit that goal. So now the cool part is we're back to re-goal setting, right? So number one Mitsubishi dealer in the DC market. As far as volume, we're between the two stores, we're a little over 300 transactions a month. Have a big parts operation as well between both locations, and yeah, that's it.
Are you guys, and what's 2024 looking like? Are you guys going to expand? Are you going to do more acquisition? Are you going to sell different cars, or is it Mitsubishi and Nissan still?
2024 goals are 2 acquisitions, right? So if it ends up being 3, if it's a multi-point kind of deal, end of 2024, 2 more locations, franchise locations.
Will it be Nissan and Mitsubishi?
Not really boxing ourselves in. Yeah. You can't really say, hey, I want this or I want this certain brand in this certain market. You just have to see what comes available.
And how does the franchise process work? Like if somebody was like, hey, I want to start selling cars, and they where do you start? Like, do they have a rigorous qualification process to become a franchisee? Like Joe Smith is like, now he wants to start selling cars. It's not that simple, probably, right?
No, it's not. Well, the first part is you say, all right, you're kind of you're getting at the point of you're a used car dealer, is what you're saying?
Yeah, like
Joe Smith's a used car dealer.
Yeah, he's got money. He's like, hey, I want to take a crack at this.
Yep.
Maybe he has a building and it's empty.
Yep.
And it was a car dealership, but maybe the guy owned the damn property and somebody was renting it for him, and then he took it over.
Yeah.
The cars are gone, but it's set up to be an auto dealership, and he's like, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself. I mean, so where does the guy start? Like, I'm just curious. I've never...
First place he would start is there any open points? The point would be, if it's Nissan, Mazda, Toyota, Honda, are there any open points? Is there an available point in this market that's not being operated currently by whoever, right? Whatever dealer group.
So they protect the franchisees to make sure that there's not somebody in too close of a proximity.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt their sales.
Yeah.
Is there like a certain radius, northeast, south, and west?
They're all different. Every OEM's different, yeah.
So it just depends?
It just depends,
That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, so, hypothetical, let's go through it. Hey, Joe Smith wants to get a car dealership. He calls, let's say he calls Nissan, right? Hey, what's up? I found this, I found this property. Do I have a green light? Nobody's operating it. I'd love to put a point here. And then from that point, the application process starts.
Yeah, so there's a fee. They qualify you to make sure you're not some psycho.
Yep.
And then it starts, right?
Yeah.
There's probably credit and everything else. So like,
So,
hear-
or the other process is they go find an existing business, right?
Someone that's selling.
Someone that's selling, right? Or you would hire a broker.
Yeah, to find you one.
Yeah,
Which
to
is
find
probably,
you one.
yeah, but you guys know how to do it. You know the game. You guys know how to win and succeed. The average person probably can't come into it. They're probably going to fall into a pit if they, most likely, right?
Yeah,
Most likely.
yeah, most likely.
I hear people all the time, especially around here where we are, they're like, oh, I got my dealer's license. Everybody says that around here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually a lot of these guys, you know, they try to go to these auctions and then they buy cars and they sell them. So that's more of like a hobbyist kind of thing, right? Like maybe they buy Lux cars or Nissans or any variety. So like it's kind of the same thing, but not exactly, because to be a franchisee of Nissan is very specific. But somebody could technically get their dealer's license and start selling a fleet of different cars, right?
It would be used cars, right?
Yeah, used cars.
Yeah.
So I could go to an auction with cash, buy them things, and start selling them, technically.
Technically, you could, yeah.
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 I hear people saying that all the time.
Yeah, I don't.
It's kind of loose, right? It's a little douchey, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah.
It's an Orange County thing.
And maybe it's an orchard.
People always say that. I swear to God, I hear that all the time. I swear to God, dude.
It's just like any other business. You're like, hey, I'm gonna go open up a construction business, and like, all right, what are you doing? Are you building, multi-families or skyscrapers, or are you painting, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing. Whereas I got my dealer's license, I'm gonna sell one car a month, and I have a little, small place I'm renting that's my address, and I got a business license.
Yeah, you mean like somebody that just does traditional used car sales and they have like a bunch of different cars?
Yeah.
I guess you can compare those two. Like Joe Smith has a lot. He's got BMWs, Mitsubishis, Nissans all on his lot. Like
Sure.
we have a lot of that stuff around here in
Yeah.
Orange County. So what's the difference between something like that and then selling specifically for Nissan? I assume it's the franchisee component.
So if you're an independent dealer, you're going to be selling used cars. Independent would be the technical definition for a used car dealer. A franchise dealer would be you sell new cars. You've been approved from a manufacturer through their qualification process, and you're approved to sell new cars on their behalf.
To sell their cars. So
And then you're selling their cars, you're selling their parts, and then, I think the biggest difference is when you sell used, if you're an independent dealer, you just sell used cars, right? You can get a service department, but it's much harder to build up a service department and to have those customers coming in for repairs if you're not a new car dealer, right? Because you don't have those cars that are under factory warranty. You don't have the brand recognition for them to come in and get their car serviced or get their car inspected or get their car repaired. Once you become a franchise dealer, then you're not just selling used cars. You're selling used cars. You're selling new cars. You have assistance from the manufacturer. You have advertising assistance from the manufacturer. You have brand recognition, and then you're selling parts as well, right? So you've entered a different part of the business, and you're not just selling used cars, if that makes sense, right?
yeah, and then does Nissan take a certain percentage of top line revenue? Is that the structure?
No.
Oh, it doesn't work like that?
No, no part of top line revenue. No.
How does it work? How do they make their money?
They make their money off of car sales, right?
So they take a percentage of the car.
It's just whatever their markup is on the car that they're making.
Okay.
Right. So if they make a $15,000 car, their markup on that car might be, I don't know, $4,000.
So the margins are tight for the dealer.
And they get paid very tight. People would think that a new car is, or even a used car, if you're making like a 10% margin,
You're killing it.
yeah, you're doing a lot better than most. So for example, if we go buy on a used car, if we go buy, 100 used cars in a month, we might not profit on 30 of them. We might not profit on 40 of them, right? But in the law of averages, how'd you do on those other 60? How did you do on those other 70, right?
And then you take the total of them all and see
Yeah.
what you're. Dang, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and when you're selling new cars, people would think, oh my gosh, you have this, this huge margin on it, But then you're bringing in, hey, you have the guy up the street that's 20 miles away, and he's pricing his cars at this, right? So then you're like, okay, what's my unique proposition to why do business with me, right? Because once you get into the new car game, you are competing with other new car dealers that are not far away. So I think in business too is, what is your unique proposition that makes you different from the guy up the street? Why buy from you, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times there's probably value that you're offering to your customers and you just don't realize it, right? So you have to figure out what is it that we offer that John up the street doesn't offer at his dealership or up the street at his business. Figure out what your value package proposition is and make sure that's part of your sales process.
Yeah.
Make sure that's getting dropped down throughout your team.
Yeah. It's probably the stuff that people don't think about, like the little stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Customers love the little stuff.
They do.
They like to be catered to, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
They want an experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because buying a car can be a pain in the ass with all the paperwork, and you get stuck there. It's like hours, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm about to deal with cars recently, and I'm like dreading it. Or soon I have to deal with a car transaction, and I'm like, it's going to suck because I'm going to be stuck there for a little while, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of interesting. I was going to ask the comparative between service and car sales. Which one makes more money? What has a better margin?
It just depends on the brand, you know? It depends on your
For
brand.
you guys?
Which one makes more money?
I mean, has a better margin.
Oh, better margin? Service and parts does, yeah.
Yeah, I
But
figured.
it's a lower dollar item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it has a better margin.
Yeah.
Seems like service is a good game if you're in that business, huh? Oh yeah, I know what I wanted to ask you next.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I've been wanting to ask all these questions, and I'm being honest because I'm always curious. Because I bought used cars, fancy cars, everything, right? Range Rover, Porsche. I've had all these different cars.
Whole bunch of bad decisions.
Bad decisions, good decisions. My 2016 Honda was the best decision I ever made.
2016 Honda is always going to be a good decision.
Yeah, it's the greatest car ever. It's like when Jeff Bezos is driving down the street right after he became a billionaire. They're like, "You're worth $200 billion. We would think that you'd have a nicer car." He goes, "This is a perfectly fine car," you know, and it's like 15 years old and the wheels are about to fall off. Have you ever seen that video?
I have, yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah.
So funny. But I've been curious about this. I always wonder, do the Nissans, Mitsubishis, Toyotas, which we assume the vast majority of the public, American public, is driving sort of those mid-range cars, probably, if you looked at the numbers, make more money? Or do the luxe cars, like Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, and so on, make more dough?
The higher
end ones.
the more the car costs, the more margin there is.
I always wondered.
Yeah.
I always thought like the Mitsubishis, Nissans, Toyotas, Hondas made more money.
No.
Just because of the sheer volume of the amount of people that drive.
Per car, you're saying?
Yeah.
No.
No way, huh?
No way.
I've always been curious about that. I don't know. Cars are like, I love cars and I hate them at the same time. They drive me nuts.
Yeah.
They're annoying, aren't they? They can be. I mean, they're necessary, but they can be a pain in the ass.
You know, I think I look at it as it's cars are like oxygen, man. You know, I think sometimes the car business has a really bad rap, and when you look at the car business and how many people it employs and the jobs it creates for our economy, I think at least me and my brothers, we take a lot of pride in it. And I think sometimes people in the car business are almost, a new salesman is like maybe like shy or timid to say, "Hey, I'm a car salesman," and you know. I look at it totally different. So the way I look at it is you're a professional. Like, people need you. They need us. They need a car. How many people woke up today out of 100 people needed a car?
Oh,
99, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
So, or 100. So are they a pain in the ass? Can cars be a pain in the ass? Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, but if you take care of them and you maintain them and you make a good choice for what fits your needs or what fits your budget, then
Well, I think when I was saying a pain in the ass, what I was really referring to, I want to clarify that point, is the expensive ones.
Okay.
The Range Rovers.
Yes.
The Mercedes, the Porsches, they're a nightmare.
They're maintenance
Fucking nightmare.
They're maintenance cars.
Yeah, like they're just, dude, it's like brakes or a battery on a Range Rover. I mean, or oil change.
Sure, yeah.
On a
You're like,
Range
hey,
Rover.
my oil change, hey, my brakes.
And then they never have pads.
You're at least $4,000,
You gotta
just
wait.
like that.
They smoke the brakes on those cars, on the Range Rovers, because they're so damn heavy.
They're very heavy, yeah.
And then you're on a damn waiting list, because every fucking douchebag, and I'm one of them in Orange County, has a fucking Range Rover.
You are a Orange County Range Rover douchebag.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
And then I'm like, I can't believe I drink this douchebag Kool-Aid again. I already have one of these fucking cars, and now I got another one. And this is another one of those stories I always dream about. Like, I have a close, intimate relationship with the Hyundai Sonata, okay?
Okay.
because I think it's an excellent, beautiful car for the price. It's a fantastic car. And
Great car.
when I fell on my face the second time, I got a 2016 Hyundai Sonata, and it was cheap. It was like 12 grand or something at the time, and I was like, and I just love that car, man. It
Yeah.
looked really cool. It was sexy. It was like a sport, and I got it tinted.
Yeah.
And I had it, and it's like I ended up giving it away, but basically I feel like I was lighter. I used to sit with this priest, family friend of mine, and I would sit with him, and we would eat cookies and drink tea, and he would go, I travel light. I don't want to have a lot of weight on my shoulders, and I think fancy cars can be a weight on your shoulders, you know,
A little bit, yeah.
at times, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, because if they break, like, it's a pain in the ass, dude.
Yeah.
It's annoying. But a Hyundai, that thing's a beast. You got to
Yeah.
get the tires replaced, no big deal. Brakes, no big deal. Oil change, boom. So in your opinion,
Maybe you should buy. I think you should buy that Sonata again.
yeah, most folks are better
Yeah.
off with sort of these mid-range. There's the Sonata, there's the Camry, Nissan,
Yeah.
Mitsubishi. They suit people better for the most part, right?
Yeah, they
In
do.
your opinion.
They do, in my opinion. I think where the place where people go wrong with buying cars is they max themselves out and then they bump themselves again. What we try to do different is when somebody comes in, listen to their needs, listen to whatever they need, family, you know, do they have kids, do they travel? If you can address the customer's needs, you can put them in a good financial position, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if you could afford cars, fancy cars, sometimes it's still not smart.
Well, I
Right.
think when you can afford fancy cars, you're probably working to be able to have nice things like fancy cars. So,
I know. It's like this constant battle that I have. But I go into my car and I'm like, it doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't.
no?
Not really. I mean, when I first get it, I would say actually the Range Rover is the best. It's the most comfortable car in the world as far as driving. You feel like you're floating on a cloud, and I think and it's beautiful. So I think
It is beautiful.
That's the edge they have. There's no more comfortable car, but they do break, and they're expensive, and they smoke brakes. Like the brakes are ridiculous. Like
Did you lease it or buy it?
This one I bought, this particular one.
How? Yeah.
It's fairly new. I'm just saying this one I have, but I'm just saying I've had other ones before. I'm just saying like,
Do you put a lot of mileage on it?
no, I switch between my cars. You know, I have a truck too.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying like, I think that luxury car like whereas a Porsche isn't comfortable. It's not.
No.
The Panamera is like the most comfortable one, but they're just not comfortable. Ferraris are not comfortable. Lamborghinis are not comfortable. They fucking suck.
Yeah.
You're like this, you know, it's like they look cool though, but like when you own one, they're not. They're, you know, so it's, I don't know. We got down this car rabbit hole. I'm just curious about your opinion about that. How was the '08 recession? How did it affect your business, and how did you guys survive that?
For us, whenever you go into an economic crisis, you look at what are your 3 or 4 biggest expenses inside of the company, right? Because you can knock out some low-hanging fruit, but the biggest thing you have to do is you have to say, all right, what do we need to operate, right? What do we need to be profitable? What tools do we need to have in order to be able to do our job, right? You start there, and you go to, all right, hey, how many, you know, what's our target for phone calls? What's our target for sales? How much are we currently doing? Are we required to, what's our staff requirement for how many phone calls do the sales team need to hit? Hey, how many phone calls does the management team need to get? And then start going into and looking and see what people are doing in their day-to-day jobs, because a lot of times when you grow, you'll go in after an economic crisis and you go in and you built some jobs, or you created some jobs for some people that were maybe to cover up some inefficiencies of some other people who weren't doing their jobs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. You got to cut and you got to take a look at everything and make sure that you can survive that, because everything's temporary. It was just a season. I mean,
Yeah.
a long season, but it was.
Yeah.
But it's great that you guys survived that. My parents got totally wiped out.
What'd they do?
They had real estate, a bunch of
Okay.
real estate. They got completely wiped out. They lost everything, and I know a lot of people did. But
How much real estate did they have?
they had like 10 properties. They
Wow.
lost them all.
Yeah.
They had to start over. That was brutal for a lot of people. a lot of people just kept buying, and then it's kind of crazy. So like, life has seasons, right? And like, that's why I think the logical side of you goes, yeah, we should run it lean. We don't need to overextend ourselves. And I wanted to kind of talk about one of Parkinson's laws, which is with your increases in income, your expenses increase in
Correct.
tandem with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think as business people, we understand, and even consumers, they should understand or should try to not do that if they can,
Yeah.
like increase their expenses with their increases in income.
I think for us in our businesses is a monthly financial review from the profit and loss statement is looking at everything, looking at every single cost. You're looking at supplies, you're looking at paper, you're looking at every single thing that goes into the financial statement and doing a deep dive on it. And if anything is plus or minus on the financial statement, on the profit and loss statement monthly, question it.
Yeah, so you guys look at it monthly. That's good.
Yeah.
So you're really, you guys, especially since the margins are a little tighter, you have to be even more cognizant of that, right?
Yeah. It's not just cutting expenses either. And our strategy has always been to have a very, very strong sales culture, a very strong sales mindset. We like to call it, nothing can out-train a bad diet, meaning if you're heavy in expenses, then you can't out-train that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So but the one thing that we know is that if we're operationally effective on sales and we have a sales culture and our team is bought into developing and following a sales process, we've always excelled in having that strong sales culture.
Yeah, and so 2008 hits, and then all of us were surprised with a pandemic. Nobody saw that coming.
No.
And that had to affect car sales. You have to get pretty creative and pretty strategic at that point, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because like for a period of time, brick and mortar's closed. It's not like people are walking around. They can't come in and start shopping like they normally would. So you guys probably had to get pretty creative during that season too, I would imagine, right?
A little bit. In the very beginning part, there was a lot of safety measures you were taking, but it didn't last as long as people thought it would, because people, when you're making that big of a purchase and it's something you have to drive on a day-to-day basis and you're going to use it every single day of your life, people still want to drive the car, right? I think that is an example of, hey, how do you handle a crisis in your business? And one thing that we've always, we call it stop, drop, and roll. Something comes up, if it's a crisis, if it's COVID, if it's a market change, you have to do a dive into what's the strategy going to be. You have to stop, you have to look at it and make adjustments fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you got during that time, because all businesses were shut down, did they make, in your area, was there any exception, or did you have to close down?
Didn't have to close down.
Oh,
No.
so they
automotive was deemed as a necessary business.
Yeah, it was a necessity, huh?
Yeah, people have to get their cars replaced, parts fixed, cars repaired, and they need to be able to buy a new car if they need a new car.
Yeah, so you didn't have to close down at all.
No.
So you just had to have some more restrictions.
In our market, we were able to operate. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know cannabis was deemed as a necessity here in California.
Really?
Yeah, it was very important. They wanted to make sure everybody could get their weed while they were at home.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You got to be able to get stoked.
It's true, I swear. Am I right? I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, in California. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was a good move actually.
I think
'cause
it's
people
fine,
were
yeah.
losing their mind.
I don't have a problem with it.
You
Yeah.
gotta smoke a joint, dude. You're stuck in
Yeah.
the fucking house.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's
Peloton and weed
Peloton and
skyrocketed. I know
Yeah.
that for sure.
Zoom, Teams.
Zoom, Teams, Peloton, weed,
Yeah.
at-home workouts, weights. Rogue, I know, made a lot of money. They're from Ohio, Rogue. So we were talking before about being prepared for uncertain times because they're going to come no matter what. It's inevitable that you're going to have seasons, good and bad, in business and in life. I mean, you can't avoid it. So that's what we're talking about. We had 08, you had 08, you had COVID, and right now there's kind of a climate right now, an uncertain climate. We're not really sure. We're in an election year. It's the craziest election I've ever seen. We don't really know which way it's going to go. Trump or Biden. Hey, they might even pull Biden out and slide someone else in before the last minute. Who the hell knows? So that is a factor, and it's like you were talking, or it was brought up, you have the controllables and the non-controllables. So if you can speak on that a little bit, like, are you feeling that way? Do you get that sense that we live in an uncertain climate right now, that people are not sure what's coming, and does
Sure.
it bother you, or, you know?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't bother me. Like you said, control what you can control. What you can't control, you can't control, right? Um, the the one thing that we can control in our day-to-day businesses, operations, right? Team building and culture, right? So if you can work on operations, if you can continue to be more effective, if you can work on team building, if you can work on leaning into your strengths, um, I think we're going to be fine. All right. I think any business owner is going to be fine if they lean into that. The the one thing to me that's interesting for all businesses is how is AI going to apply to the business, right? I think, in my opinion, that's like the most uncertain thing that maybe I think people are talking about it, but I think it's something that the sooner you can embrace AI during these uncertain times, because in my opinion, I think AI is more of the uncontrollable right now, or the most uncertain right now compared to even the economy.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you need to be practicing AI every single day.
Yeah.
Which I do, 30 minutes a day minimum. Should be practicing it like an instrument. If you're not, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
It's the same with AI right now. I have a very strong opinion on AI. With AI right now, it's what grandparents said in 1995 when they were talking about the internet. Everybody's like, what the fuck's the internet?
Yeah.
They're still ordering furniture and stuff from a catalog. I remember my grandma, she used to order sheets out of a damn catalog with a pen.
You cut it out and then tape it on a piece of
Yeah,
paper, right?
yeah. And then, the old timers would be like, I don't use the fucking computer,
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah? Well, it's going to use you eventually. And I think it's the same thing with AI. I think I'm going to make a bold statement right now, but I personally believe that 40% of the current jobs are going to be wiped out in 15 years as a result of AI. Straight the fuck up. Somebody's going to bring you and I went to CES and I saw this shit in real life, and it was spooky. When you're in a hotel, a robot's going to bring you your room service and your towels and your soap and everything else. Keyless entry, you're going to go to a reception desk, there ain't going to be no fucking receptionist. Robots are going to drive trucks. I mean, it's going to be crazy. Some futuristic shit. That's what's coming. And I think 40% of the workforce is going to get wiped out.
Are you going to let a robot drive you around?
No.
Okay.
Not me.
No.
I'll get a Camaro. And I think stubborn crusties, we all know stubborn crusties, right? They got sweat stains on the couch and they wear those crusty, beefy white tees type people, where they're like, I don't deal with AI, I don't deal with computers. That's not my thing, that kind of shit.
I'm old fashioned.
Yeah, I'm old fashioned.
I'm old school.
And because they do something a certain way, maybe they're putting in more labor into something and they don't realize it. And I've tested it. Like, I have certain things that I like to do, like just personally, like write as an example, or, I toyed around with imagery. Like, I have a story I'm working on and I can see the story in my head, like visually. And so I've tried AI image generator as an example, just to test it. And it's not perfect and it fucks things up. Like, one of the photos had like a phone booth in it, and it like spelled phone wrong, or it's not perfect yet, but neither was the internet. I remember my first chats, they were slower than molasses. I had to wait like fucking 5 minutes for someone to send the chat back. Not anymore. Like, we can't imagine our lives without our iPhones. So I think it's coming for us. I think you're going to wake up one morning, you're going to push a button, an avatar is going to come out of your phone. It's going to prompt your machine to have your latte ready for you perfectly. It's going to tell you to pick up your medication at 2 o'clock at Walgreens. It's going to order your chicken Caesar salad from Daisy's Diner, and so on.
That's not, what did you say, 15 years?
That's 5 years. That's 3 to 5 years.
That's soon, yeah.
That's fast.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to custom design that avatar to come out of your damn phone.
Yeah.
Straight up. You're going to go into the metaverse, which is essentially the physical universe is going to go into the metaverse. It's already happening. You're going to go, I mean, it's crazy what's coming. So yeah, I think about it all the time. It's interesting that you bring it up.
Yeah, in my head, something like that is going to be what's going to happen with the person that has a personal assistant, right, or an executive assistant. I think that person, that would be an example of, hey, you're going to have this avatar that just does it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the smart executive assistant or personal assistant would be adapting to technology and
Correct.
becoming as advanced and aggressive as possible at being ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
That'll solidify their position long term, 100%, hands down. You know how many people are like, I don't know. I think I've been late to the party before on certain things, and like this, I'm not going to let that happen to me with AI. So I use it and I play with it. I treat it like an instrument. I play with it pretty much daily. I fuck with it. We use it all the time, obviously, because we're in the creative space and we experiment with it. It's not perfect. Some of the integrations, like visual, I think there's some more work there. It's not perfect, but they're going to get there.
So I think you brought up a good point. You mentioned you failed before and you weren't ahead of the curve on certain things, right?
Yeah, I was late to the damn party.
You were late to the damn party, right? So you've learned, I think this is a great point, is sometimes people see, hey, you have this awesome office here, you have all this cool stuff. They think you sell something, it gets easier, and then you just make it, right? And everything's just on cruise. So you have taken your prior failures and you're taking your prior failures and you're applying them now to where they're going to be your future strengths, right? You're going to lean into what was once your weakness and now it's your strength. And your biggest thing that you're working on now that you weren't working on then was you mentioned, hey, I'm working on 30 minutes a day of studying, toying around with AI. Now you're working on that self-development like we touched on earlier, right?
Yeah, I think all of us need to do it.
Yeah. So in talking about uncertain times, if you can lean into personal development, self-development, taking things like AI, how to apply them to your business. If you're working on developing your team, if you're working on developing your processes, if you're tracking data in your business, good data, right? Garbage in, garbage out. But if you're tracking good data and you start to see those dips, that's where you have to stop, drop and roll and assess, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've learned that, right? And I think where people sometimes, when it gets rocky going into uncertain times, they want to they want to hire a consultant. Okay. They want to hire somebody to come in and solve the problem for them, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, if not all the time, you can just go into, everybody has talented people on their team. We've made the mistake before of going out trying to hire somebody, hey, what do you think we should do with this? Or be in a mastermind group, and we're excelling in our business right now, right? Everybody's trending down, we're trending up. And they're looking for, what's the silver bullet? What's your website you're using? Who's your ad agency? We're not really, there's no new ad agency, right? There's no new software vendor, right? What are you using to track this or to track these leads? Well, we're not doing anything different, right? We're just managing all of those things better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, huh? Nobody's going to come in and save the day.
Nobody's going to come in and save the day for you. You know, you
No,
can't have an outside party come in and try to save your day for you when you know your business the best, right?
I think we want it to be that way. God, if I could just push this button and everything gets better. Well, life doesn't work like that.
There's no magic button or no magic lead source or no magic tool, right?
No,
No.
there's not.
So I think during the uncertain times, if we can lean into just tracking, watching data, work on team building, staying deep in the trenches with your people, being on the front line, you're going to be able to be bulletproof and be able to survive in any situation, any economy, good or bad, right?
What are some of the key components and key operational functions in a business operational infrastructure?
Operational infrastructure, leadership, processes. Are your processes and your systems documented, right?
Right.
Do your people know what they are? Are they following them? Are they living by them? Are you leading by example, right? How often are you reviewing those? Accountability. And the last thing would be we have people, right?
And there are things that I think about in my business that have been brought to me that I didn't adopt before. I was a disaster,
Okay.
operational fucking mess, like spaghetti thrown on the floor, right?
Okay.
If it was left up to me, it'd be a mess. And I know that, and it's okay. But I'm willing to adopt something, and it's like, how do we make a complex business simple? And I think operations has the ability to do that for a business, right? And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That it has simple functions that help, no matter how big the business is, it keeps it together so it doesn't. And so, are there certain tools that you use within your operational, like execution? Like, are there certain things that you use? Like, Jeff Bezos interviewed just recently. He was talking. He's obsessed with memos. Like, he's obsessed with them. So
I didn't read that. What was this thing on memos? What was it?
it was an interview that I saw that he did, and he, because he deals with high-level executives, obviously all over the world, so he wants them to spend a lot of time, and he was talking about huge lengths of time. Obviously, they're dealing with monster business, preparing memos for these large-scale meetings that they have, and distilling it down and down and down and down and down, like making it as clear and as concise as possible.
Yeah.
Like that was something that was super important to him, which falls under operations.
Well, he's talking about less is more, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
So we like to lean
taking
on.
their complex business, distilling it and making it simplified. And for him, he's like, give me a memo that's like the best memo anybody's ever seen. Like you could win an award for this fucking memo. Like for him, that's everything, right? In his business. But
Well, if he's doing it on his scale, if his blueprint is less is more, have a memo, let's condense it. I mean, you have to say, yeah, that's going to apply to any business.
yeah,
So the one thing we've always followed with, you said, hey, systems and processes, right? Talking about that in operations. We've always followed the model of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So let's say you have a process for, something in your factory line, right? Like you go through, you take everybody that's involved in it, right? Sometimes upper management will write it, or they'll have middle management write it, and the person who's writing it is thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about the whole picture. So getting everybody involved, doing a deep dive on what our process is, and then removing all of the unnecessary is how you create processes, how you create efficiency, and you can be the most productive. I think sometimes people want to make it this big drawn out thing or a fancy kind of graph or flow chart, and it can be really simple. You can have it on a Word doc and put your logo on it and say, this is our process at the factory line. This is our process when inventory comes in. A, B, C, D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep it simple, stupid.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true, right? I think
Very true.
I'll brain dump like long, because I write like long form my thoughts, which is good. I think it's a good process. I think this is kind of an interesting topic for business where if that has to be your first draft, fine, just dump the thing long form and then distill it. It's like like Stephen King says, 2 drafts and a polish.
Okay.
Write 2
Yeah.
drafts and polish it.
Or
So it's like,
don't strive for perfection on it. Get a
yeah,
process out there and get everybody following it. Because 80% of let's say you roll out a process and it's not 100%, right?
yeah.
Would you agree that an 80% process is better than a 0% process?
Well, yeah.
Right. So I think sometimes we're very guilty of this. You want to roll it out and have something that's just perfect, that's bulletproof, that looks cool, right? When you put it down on paper. But that's not really where the magic happens. The magic happens is roll it out, see what's broken, then go back in and chop it up and remix it,
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to give yourself room, obviously, to not get it right the first time.
Sure.
And then you keep refining it and refining it and refining it to get it better and better and better. But I greatly appreciate and I'm greatly loving that we have our operational situation gets better and better. It like makes me feel really good because I know if I was in charge of that shit, it'd be, dude, it would not be good. I can tell you.
So
But we
I-
have
so I-
processes and systems for everything now,
Yeah.
and it's very good.
Yep.
And so it's easy to follow, and we get better at it.
So I think another very, very important thing that people sometimes you can maybe sort of deter people away from you or kind of keep them away from you is not taking in new ideas from the people that are boots on the ground, the people that are in the trenches every single day, right? The
Yeah.
ones that are doing that blocking and tackling for you. So you can't be necessarily, if you have all the answers up top, then you're not going to get anywhere. So taking that feedback from middle management, from lower management, from the sales staff, or the technicians, or the people that are in the factory line, whatever your industry is, take that feedback and don't be scared to modify and tweak your process, right?
Yeah.
And really have open dialogue with your staff and with your team to say, hey, John, tell me, how's it going with our new process? Is there anything in here you don't like? Is there anything here you want to add? Because if you have a blueprint and everybody on the team has bought into that blueprint or that documented process or that system, and everybody agrees that it's the way to be most effective, you have the buy-in.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to have in your culture. If you want to go roll out a process that you came up with up top and nobody had any say-so or nobody had any input, they're not going to want to do it.
Yeah, I think they have. It makes me think about Creativity Inc. The one thing that stood out and something that kept evolving within Pixar, and that they got better and better and better with it. And they were getting to the point where they were having like retreats. They were like going to a mountain town and like staying in a hotel, and they had everyone come together, and they called it brain trust meetings. They started bringing everyone together from different departments. Of course, by this time they had grown and had movies out and everything else, but like
I love that for culture too. That's awesome for culture.
Yeah, it was really good. They wanted
Yeah.
to give everyone a seat at the table, and they would stay together for a period of time, like 3 days.
Yeah.
They would literally go to a mountain town and like rent cabins and like get together and just iron it out, hash it out, which is why pretty much every Pixar movie is near perfect. And it's because of this brain trust process that they implemented. If you think about it, like Toy Story is like a flawless film, all 3 of them. Pretty
Yeah.
much every film they ever came out with is pretty much close to perfect.
Don't they have 4 now?
4, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
4. Sorry, I'm behind.
Kind of label
Yeah, you got
myself
the
as
kids.
a dad, so yeah.
And that's what he's saying. He's like, the reason why it's that way is because we give ourselves a lot of time we want to get it right before we release it, which I love that and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think that is the real power, is that not being so quick, to swing from the hip and release something, and also release it within your organization first and test it in our version of the brain trust. Let it breathe and refine it. Let it breathe, refine it before you release it to the world. If you have the luxury of doing that.
I think that brings up a good point with the people component.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that you have to do when you go into uncertain times, or when you're building, or when you're growing, is you have to invest in your people, whether it's their development, whatever industry you're in. You have to figure out a way that you can invest in your people and help them develop themselves. Something that's got us very, very far, and we're, just like you, we failed, right? Fell on our face, however many dozen times. Now we're at the point to where we're always trying to invest in our people. How can we add value? How can we help this representative, or how can we help this salesperson, or how can we help this manager develop themselves personally?